The dollar bill sat on the white tablecloth like an insult rendered in paper and ink. Imani Lawson stared at it for 3 full seconds before her professional mask clicked into place. $1. After a $400 meal, after 90 minutes of impeccable service, after she'd remembered his preference for water with no ice and his allergy to shellfish without him having to remind her twice. $1. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, humiliation burning hot in her chest. The man in the corner booth, the one who came every Thursday at exactly 8 p.m. for the past 6 months, had finally shown her what he really thought of her efforts. She was worth exactly 100 pennies of his time. Around her, Celestine's hummed with the quiet elegance of Chicago's most exclusive Korean-French fusion restaurant. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables dressed in starched white linens. The air smelled of truffle oil and imported sake and money, so much money that it made the atmosphere feel thick, almost suffocating. Imani had worked here for 3 years, ever since her brother died and left her with nothing but debt and questions and a studio apartment she could barely afford. She'd clawed her way up from dishwasher to server, learned to smile through condescension, learned to be invisible when the wealthy wanted privacy and attentive when they demanded service. But this felt like a slap. She picked up the dollar bill, preparing to pocket it with whatever dignity she had left. That's when she felt it. The texture was wrong. Too stiff. Too thick. Imani flipped it over. Written in microscopic handwriting along the border of George Washington's portrait. In ink so fine she almost missed it. Trust no one in this building. 11 p.m. Kitchen exit. Come alone or die with everyone else. The bill slipped from her fingers. Her eyes shot to the corner booth, but the man was already gone. Table 7 sat empty, the chair pushed back at a precise angle, the napkin folded into a perfect square. No trace that he'd ever been there except for the empty plates she'd cleared and the message that had just turned her world into a countdown clock. Imani glanced at the antique clock above the bar. 9:47 p.m. She had 1 hour and 13 minutes to decide if she was brave enough to trust a stranger, or foolish enough to ignore a warning written in the margins of an insult. Behind her, the kitchen doors swung open. Chef Laurent's voice carried across the dining room, sharp with irritation. "Imani, table 12 is waiting on their amuse-bouche. Move!" She pocketed the dollar bill, her heart hammering against her ribs, and returned to work. But her mind was already racing through possibilities, through every Thursday night for the past 6 months, through every detail she'd catalogued about the man in booth 7 without realizing she'd been studying him. Because Imani Lawson had a gift she'd never asked for and often cursed. She remembered everything, every face, every conversation, every detail down to the smallest gesture. Her brother had called it a superpower. Her therapist called it hypervigilance, born from trauma. Right now, it was the only thing keeping her from dismissing the message as a prank. Because she'd noticed things about the man in booth 7, things that didn't add up. The way his eyes tracked every entrance and exit. The way he sat with his back to the wall, always. The way his left hand stayed near his jacket pocket, fingers drumming a rhythm that looked casual but felt ready. The way other customers gave his table a wide berth without consciously realizing they were doing it. The way he'd looked at her last Thursday when she'd accidentally responded to his thank you, in Korean a reflexive kionmaneo that had slipped out before she could stop it. The way his entire demeanor had shifted, something sharp and assessing entering his gaze before the mask of polite indifference returned. She'd been so careful after that. So careful to be just a server, just invisible, just professional. But he'd noticed. And now, apparently, she was involved in something that required warnings written on dollar bills and threats about dying with everyone else. The clock read 9:51. Imani delivered the amuse-bouche to table 12, refilled wine glasses at table 4, cleared plates from table 9. She moved through her duties with mechanical precision, while her mind spun through scenarios, through dangers, through the very real possibility that in 69 minutes, she might have to make a choice that would change everything. At 10:30, she made her decision. She was going to that kitchen exit, not because she trusted the man in booth 7, but because the alternative, ignoring the warning and potentially watching people die, was something her conscience couldn't survive. Her brother had taught her that. In his last months, when paranoia had turned him skeletal and sleepless, when he'd insisted on teaching her self-defense and basic Korean phrases and how to spot when someone was armed, he'd made her promise. If something feels wrong, Imani, you listen to that feeling, even if everyone else thinks you're crazy. Especially then. She'd thought he was losing his mind. Now she wondered if he'd been trying to save her life. At 10:55, Imani clocked out early, claiming a migraine. The floor manager barely looked up, too busy managing the dinner rush. She grabbed her coat from the employee locker, checked her phone, no messages, no missed calls, just the time glowing 10:57 p.m., and walked toward the kitchen exit with her heart in her throat. The alley behind Celestine smelled like garbage and rain, and the distant lake wind that always carried a hint of fish and industry. Security lights cast everything in harsh white, creating shadows that looked alive. Imani stepped outside and the door locked behind her with a click that sounded like finality. For 10 seconds, she was alone. Then a hand closed around her wrist and pulled her into the darkness between the dumpsters. Character introductions, 138. Imani's training kicked in before conscious thought. She twisted her wrist in the grip, broke free using the technique her brother had drilled into her dozens of times, and drove her knee upward toward where she estimated a groin would be. Her knee met empty air. "Good instincts," a voice said from behind her. "But you telegraphed the move 3 seconds early. Your weight shifted." Imani spun. The man from booth 7 stood there, hands visible, posture relaxed but ready. In the harsh alley light, he looked different than he had in the restaurant. More real, more dangerous. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with the kind of build that came from practical strength rather than gym vanity. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so dark they looked black in the shadows. His hair was styled back, but falling slightly forward now, giving him a disheveled elegance that somehow made him more intimidating. He wore the same charcoal suit from dinner, but he'd loosened his tie and rolled his sleeves to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with ink. Imani caught glimpses of a dragon's scales, Korean characters, geometric patterns that looked both traditional and modern. "You came alone," he observed. "Smart or suicidal? I haven't decided which. You left me a threatening note on a $1 tip." Imani shot back, fear making her voice sharp. "So forgive me if I'm not interested in your assessment of my intelligence." Something flickered in his expression, almost a smile. "The tip was an insult designed to make you notice. The denomination was strategic, small enough to examine closely, common enough not to attract attention. The message was necessary." He tilted his head. "And you're angry about the wrong thing. Enlighten me. You should be asking why I warned you instead of letting you die with the others." The casual mention of death made Imani's stomach turn. "What others?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward her. Security footage played in grainy black and white. Celestine's kitchen, filmed from an angle that showed the walk-in freezer, the prep stations, and Imani's breath caught several figures moving with purpose that had nothing to do with food preparation. "This is from 20 minutes ago," the man said quietly. "The new sous chef started 3 weeks ago. The line cook started 2 weeks ago. The dishwasher started yesterday. None of them are who they claim to be." Imani watched the footage. The figures were doing something near the freezer, installing something that looked like gas line modification, the man confirmed. Slow leak into the ventilation system. By midnight, when the restaurant is at capacity for the late seating, the concentration will reach critical mass. One spark from the kitchen flames and the entire building becomes a crematorium. Imani's legs went weak. "You're lying." "I wish I was." "Then call the police. Call the fire department. Get everyone out. And tip off the people who ordered this?" His voice was sharp now. "They'll scatter. Regroup. Try again somewhere else. Somewhere I can't predict. No, this ends tonight, here, with me neutralizing the threat and you staying alive despite being in the worst possible place at the worst possible time. Why do you care if I live or die?" The man was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer. "Because you're Elijah Lawson's sister, and I owed him a debt I never got to repay before they killed him." The world tilted. "You knew my brother?" "We worked together, 3 years ago, before everything fell apart." He extended his hand formally. "My name is Park Ji-won. Your brother saved my life. The least I can do is return the favor by keeping his sister breathing." Imani stared at the offered hand. Her brother had never mentioned working with anyone named Park Ji-won. But then again, her brother had kept so many secrets in those final months. The unexplained money, the paranoid behavior, the Korean lessons he'd insisted she take with him. The way he'd died in what the police called a random mugging, but what Imani had never believed was random at all. She shook Ji-won's hand. His grip was firm, warm, and when his fingers wrapped around hers, she felt calluses that spoke of violence as much as the tattoos did. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Right now?" To get you somewhere safe before midnight. And after that? After that depends on whether you want to know the truth about what your brother died protecting, or whether you'd rather go back to serving overpriced fusion cuisine and pretending you're not being hunted. Hunted by who? The same people who modified that gas line. The same people who killed Elijah. The same people who've been watching you for 3 years, waiting for you to lead them to what they think you have. I don't have anything. Are you sure about that? Imani thought about her apartment, her meager possessions, the single box of her brother's things she'd kept after his death, photos, old notebooks, a jade pendant he'd always worn, a USB drive she'd never been able to access because it was password protected. The USB drive, she said slowly. Jiwon's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Where is it? Safe. Hidden. Is it with you now? No. Good. Don't tell me where it is. Don't even think too hard about it if you can help it. He glanced at his watch. We have 47 minutes. Come with me. There's someone I need you to meet, and then we're going to burn this whole operation to ash. Imani should have walked away, should have called the police despite his warnings, should have chosen the rational, sane response to a stranger claiming her dead brother had left her in the crosshairs of killers. But rationality had never explained the paranoia in Elijah's final weeks, had never explained the self-defense training or the Korean lessons or the way he'd looked at her the last time she saw him, like he was memorizing her face because he knew he wouldn't see it again. And it definitely didn't explain the way Park Ji-won looked at her now, not with desire or manipulation, but with something that looked almost like guilt. Like he'd failed once and was desperate not to fail again. 47 minutes until what? Imani asked. Until I have to decide whether to evacuate the restaurant and lose my chance at the people who killed your brother, or let innocent people die to catch guilty ones. His jaw tightened. I'd prefer a third option. Your brother was good at third options. I'm hoping his sister inherited that talent. Imani thought about the dollar bill in her pocket, about the insult that was really a warning, about 3 years of watching and waiting and trying to make sense of a death that had never made sense. What did my brother do for you? She asked. He was my accountant, my translator, my bridge between two worlds I couldn't navigate alone. Ji-won's voice roughened. And when my enemies came for him because of that connection, I wasn't there to protect him. So, he died in an alley with a knife in his back, while I was halfway across the world consolidating power I thought mattered more than loyalty. The raw honesty in his voice made something in Imani's chest crack open. Take me to your car, she said. We'll figure out the third option on the way. Ji-won's smile was sharp and grateful and dangerous. This way. He led her deeper into the alley, to where a black Genesis sedan sat idling in the shadows. The driver was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She nodded to Ji-won and studied Imani with an assessment that felt like being weighed and measured. This is her? The woman asked in Korean. Yes, Ji-won replied in the same language. Elijah's sister. The woman's expression softened fractionally. She has his eyes, stubborn and too smart for anyone's good. Imani understood every word. 3 years of Korean lessons with her brother, plus 18 months of continuing on her own after he died, meant she was conversational if not fluent. But she didn't reveal that. Not yet. Information was currency, and she was learning to be a miser. Get in, Ji-won said, switching back to English. He opened the rear door for her. Imani hesitated. This was the point of no return. Once she got in that car, she was choosing to believe Park Ji-won's story, choosing to step into whatever darkness her brother had been navigating, choosing danger over the illusion of safety. The alternative was going back to her apartment and hoping the people who'd killed Elijah had forgotten she existed. She got in the car. Ji-won slid in beside her. The driver pulled out of the alley with practiced ease, merging into Chicago traffic like water flowing downhill. Where are we going? Imani asked. Somewhere we can talk without being overheard. Ji-won pulled out his phone and started typing. Somewhere you can decide if you're willing to trade your quiet life for the truth. My life stopped being quiet the night Elijah died. No, Ji-won said softly. Your life stopped being quiet the night he met me. His death was just when you started noticing. The car drove through the Chicago night, while Imani sat beside a stranger who claimed to know her brother's secrets, heading toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Behind them, Celestine's continued serving its wealthy patrons, unaware that beneath their feet, a timer was counting down to catastrophe. And in Imani's pocket, the dollar bill felt heavier than paper should, weighted with warnings and insults, and the first thread of a truth she'd been searching for since the police had knocked on her door 3 years ago, to tell her that her brother, her brilliant, paranoid, secretive brother was dead. Inciting incident. 8:16. The safe house was in Pilsen, hidden above a Korean grocery store that stayed open until 2 a.m. Jiwon led Imani up a narrow staircase that smelled like kimchi and sesame oil, their footsteps echoing on worn linoleum. At the top, he pressed his palm to a biometric scanner disguised as a thermostat. The door clicked open. Inside was a space that managed to be both fortress and home. The walls were exposed brick, lined with monitors showing security feeds from dozens of locations throughout the city. A kitchen occupied one corner, immaculately clean. A sitting area held mismatched furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. And everywhere on every available surface were books: Korean literature, accounting textbooks, philosophy, military strategy. Imani's breath caught when she saw the shelf nearest the door. 3 books were facing outward rather than spined: The Art of War, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and The Vegetarian by Han Kang. The exact 3 books her brother had kept on his nightstand. "He spent a lot of time here?" Jiwon said quietly, noticing where her gaze had landed. "Those were his favorites. He said The Art of War taught him how to think strategically. Meditations taught him how to stay centered. And The Vegetarian reminded him that transformation was always painful but sometimes necessary." Imani touched the spine of The Art of War. The book fell open to a marked page, and she saw her brother's handwriting in the margins. "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, but sometimes you have to burn it all down to build something better." "What did he transform into?" she whispered. "Someone who tried to do the right thing in a world where right and wrong are currencies most people can't afford." Jiwon moved to the kitchen and started making tea with the practiced efficiency of ritual. "Your brother was a forensic accountant before he met me, one of the best. He could look at numbers and see the stories hidden in them: money laundering, embezzlement, fraud. He worked for law firms, for private investigators, for anyone who needed financial mysteries solved." "I know all this," Imani said, edge creeping into her voice. "I was his sister. I knew what he did for a living." "You knew what he told you he did." Jiwon poured hot water over tea leaves, the steam rising like ghosts. "You didn't know that 4 years ago. He was hired by the Korean National Police to investigate a massive money laundering operation running through Chicago's Korean business community. Legitimate restaurants and groceries being used to wash drug money, human trafficking proceeds, illegal arms sales. Billions of dollars flowing through the city, and your brother was the one who figured out how it all connected." He brought 2 cups to the low table and sat across from Imani. "The problem was that the investigation was compromised. Someone on the inside was feeding information to the organization. And when Elijah realized that his findings were being used not to stop the operation but to eliminate competitors and consolidate power, he made a choice." "What choice?" "He took everything. Every financial record, every account number, every piece of evidence he'd compiled. He encrypted it, hid it, and disappeared." Jiwon's expression was grim. "That's when he came to me." "Why you?" "Because my family was on his list of suspects." Jiwon met her eyes. "The Park family has controlled Korean business interests in Chicago for 3 generations. Some of it legitimate, some of it less so. My grandfather built an empire on construction and real estate. My father expanded into restaurants and import-export. And by the time I inherited everything, the lines between legal and illegal were so blurred they might as well not exist." He took a sip of tea. "Your brother thought I was the mastermind behind the laundering operation. He came to my office with enough evidence to put me in prison for life and made me an offer. Help him dismantle the real operation from the inside, or watch him destroy everything my family had built. And you chose to help him?" "I chose to hire him to audit my businesses. And what he found surprised us both." Jiwon's voice carried old anger. "My father's business partner, a man I'd trusted since childhood, was the one running the laundering scheme. He'd been using Park family resources as cover while building his own criminal empire. And when I confronted him, when I tried to shut it down, he tried to kill me." "Tried?" "Your brother saved my life that night. He'd anticipated the move, had been tracking my business partner's communications, and showed up with enough evidence to turn half the organization against him." Jiwon's jaw clenched. "We burned his empire to ash, seized his accounts, turned his people. And I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. No, because we'd only cut off one head. The real monster was still out there, hidden in shadows, waiting." Jiwon set down his cup. "And 3 years ago, it struck back. Elijah was killed because someone thought he'd tell them where he'd hidden the evidence under torture. They were wrong. Your brother died protecting those secrets. Protecting you. Imani's hands shook. I don't understand. Why would his death protect me? Because as long as they thought he was the only one who knew where the evidence was hidden, they had no reason to come after his family, no reason to hurt his sister. Jiwon's eyes were dark with guilt. I tried to protect you from a distance. I had people watching your apartment, made sure you got the job at Celestine's, a restaurant owned by one of my family's subsidiaries. I thought if I kept you close but invisible, you'd be safe. You got me my job? I made sure your application got seen by the right people. The rest was your competence. He paused. But 6 months ago, something changed. Elijah's old enemies started circling again, and they weren't just looking for the evidence anymore. They were looking for something specific, something they think Elijah hid with his sister before he died. The USB drive, Imani said. The USB drive, Jiwon confirmed, which apparently exists and contains something important enough to kill for. Something I didn't know about until tonight when those people decided that bombing a restaurant to eliminate you was an acceptable tactic. Imani's mind was reeling. Her quiet life, her simple job, her carefully constructed normalcy, all of it had been an illusion. She'd been living in a cage she couldn't see, protected by walls built from her brother's sacrifice, and maintained by a man who felt guilty for surviving when Elijah hadn't. The gas leak at Celestine's, she said slowly. That's about me? That's about sending a message. If I can't have the evidence, then neither can you. They're willing to burn down everything to keep their secrets buried. Then we evacuate the restaurant. We get everyone out. And they disappear again. These people are patient, Imani. They'll wait another 3 years. They'll try again. And next time, I might not be able to warn you. Jiwon leaned forward. Unless we end this tonight. Unless we use their own trap against them and burn them instead. How? By giving them what they want. By making them think they've won. His expression was sharp, calculating. The USB drive, where is it? Imani hesitated. Trusting Park Ji-won felt like stepping off a cliff blindfolded, but the alternative was continuing to live in ignorance while targets painted themselves on her back. It's in my brother's jade pendant, she said, the one he always wore. I have it on a chain around my neck. She pulled the pendant from beneath her shirt. It was the size of a quarter, intricately carved with a dragon design, hanging on a silver chain. She'd worn it every day since Elijah's funeral, a way of keeping him close. Jiwon's eyes widened fractionally. You've been wearing it? For 3 years? Yes. Why? Because that pendant is worth approximately $40,000. It's Qing Dynasty jade, museum quality. The fact that no one's tried to rob you for it means either you've been incredibly lucky or... He stopped. Or someone's been making sure you're not touched. Someone who knows what it is and has been waiting for you to lead them to the drive. Ice flooded Imani's veins. You think I've been followed this whole time? I think you're alive because you're more valuable as bait than as a corpse. Jiwon stood and moved to the monitors. He pulled up footage from multiple cameras in Imani's apartment building, the route she walked to work, the grocery store she frequented. Look, same car. Different drivers, but same license plate. They've been rotating surveillance on you for months. Imani felt sick. Every moment of privacy, every assumption of safety, had been a lie. The USB drive, Jiwon said gently. Can I see it? With trembling fingers, Imani unclasped the chain and handed him the pendant. Jiwon examined it under a desk lamp, turning it carefully. He pressed a nail against a specific spot on the dragon's scales, and the pendant separated into 2 halves. Inside, embedded in a custom-carved groove, was a micro USB drive smaller than Imani's fingernail. Your brother was brilliant, Jiwon murmured, hiding it in something you'd wear every day. Something you'd never sell or lose because it was the last piece of him you had. He looked up at her. Do you know what's on this? No, it's password protected. I tried to access it after he died but couldn't get past the encryption. May I try? Imani nodded. Jiwon inserted the drive into his computer. A password prompt appeared. He typed something, a series of Korean characters followed by numbers. The screen flashed red. Access denied. He tried again. Different combination. Another denial. What was your brother's favorite book? He asked. The Vegetarian. Jiwon typed the title in Korean. Nothing. He tried the author's name. Nothing. Think, Imani. What mattered to him? What did he value more than anything? Family, she said immediately. He always said family was the only thing that mattered when everything else was falling apart. Family in Korean is gajok, Jiwon said, typing it. The screen flashed red again. What was your relationship to him? Not just sister. What did he call you? Imani thought back to her brother's last weeks, the paranoid phone calls, the insistence on seeing her more often, the way he'd looked at her in his apartment, surrounded by files and suspicion, and said, "Ne Yuilhan Gajok," she whispered. "My only family." Jiwon typed it. "Ne Yuilhan Gajok." The screen flashed green. Access granted. Files cascaded across the monitor. Thousands of documents, spreadsheets, photographs, videos. A digital archive of evidence spanning decades, meticulously organized and cross-referenced. Jiwon scrolled through it, his expression growing darker with each passing second. "This is it," he breathed. "This is everything. Every account, every transaction, every person involved in the laundering operation. Your brother didn't just crack one case, he built a complete map of organized crime's financial infrastructure in the Midwest. And someone wants it destroyed badly enough to bomb a restaurant. Not just someone." Jiwon pulled up a specific file. A photograph filled the screen, a man in his 60s, silver-haired and elegant, standing beside the mayor of Chicago at a charity gala. Lee Sang-woo, CEO of Hansong Corporation, one of the largest Korean conglomerates in North America, philanthropist, respected business leader, and according to your brother's files, the mastermind behind a money laundering network that's washed over $3 billion in the past decade. Imani stared at the photograph. "I've seen him. He comes to Celestine's. He's friends with the owner." "He owns Celestine's," Jiwon corrected, "through shell companies and intermediaries. He owns half the high-end Korean restaurants in Chicago. They're all laundering fronts, and your brother had documented every transaction." He looked at Imani. "Lee Sang-woo is the one who ordered Elijah's death, and now he's ordered yours. Then we go to the police. We give them this evidence, and Lee Sang-woo's lawyers bury it in legal proceedings for 5 years, while he eliminates everyone who might testify against him." Jiwon's voice was hard. "I learned that lesson when we tried to take down my father's business partner through official channels. The system is designed to protect men like Lee. It's not designed to punish them. So what's your solution? Vigilante justice? I prefer to call it strategic removal of threats." He pulled up another set of files. "Your brother didn't just gather evidence for prosecution. He built a roadmap for dismantling Lee's entire operation from the inside. Account numbers, passwords, kill switches that would freeze assets. He was planning to destroy Lee's empire financially before going public with the evidence. But he died before he could execute the plan." "Yes. And I've spent 3 years trying to figure out how to finish what he started, without the final piece of the puzzle." Jiwon looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "But now you're here, and you have something I don't." "What?" Your brother's mind." Jiwon gestured to the files. "You said you tried to access this drive before, which means you thought like him. You knew what mattered to him. You understand how he organized information, how he thought about family and loyalty and protection. I don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking you to help me read these files the way Elijah intended, to find the pattern he embedded, the final key that turns this evidence into a weapon." Jiwon's hands closed over hers, warm and urgent. "I'm asking you to trust that your brother prepared you for this, that all those Korean lessons and self-defense training and paranoid warnings weren't random, they were preparation. He was teaching you how to survive the world he'd discovered, how to fight back." Imani looked at the files sprawling across the screen, at the evidence her brother had died protecting, at the man in front of her who'd promised to repay a debt by keeping her alive. "The restaurant," she said. "The gas leak. That's happening in..." She checked her watch. 31 minutes. "We can stop it remotely. I have people inside who can shut down the modified line." Jiwon's expression was grim. "But that doesn't solve the larger problem. Lee will try again. And again. Until either he gets this drive or everyone who knows about it is dead. Then we make him think the drive is gone, destroyed in the explosion. And you with it?" Imani thought about her quiet life, her studio apartment, her job serving overpriced fusion cuisine to people who left $1 tips. She thought about 3 years of existing in a cage she couldn't see, protected by walls built from her brother's blood. "My brother died to protect this information," she said quietly. "I'm not going to dishonor that sacrifice by hiding. If you have a plan to end this, to actually end it, not just delay it, then I'm in. Even if it means becoming someone you're not, even if it means stepping into a world where violence is currency and trust is a liability. My brother lived in that world. He navigated it well enough to build this, She gestured to the files. If he thought I could handle it, then I'm not going to prove him wrong. Jiwon smiled then, a real smile. Sharp and proud and fierce. Elijah said you were stubborn. He didn't mention you were fearless. I'm terrified, Imani corrected. But I'm doing it anyway. That's different. No, Jiwon said softly. That's exactly what courage is. He pulled up a schematic of Celestine's on his monitor. Here's what we're going to do. Escalation, protection phase, 1632 to 0. 23 minutes until midnight. Imani stood in the shadows across the street from Celestine's, watching wealthy patrons stream through the front entrance for the late seating. They looked so oblivious, so confident in their safety, wrapped in expensive clothes, and the certainty that nothing bad could touch them in a place this elegant. They had no idea they were walking into a tomb. Team 1 in position, a voice said through the earpiece Jiwon had given her. It was the silver-haired woman from earlier. Her name was Kim Soo-jin, and she was apparently Jiwon's head of security and the closest thing to family he had left. Team 2 ready? Another voice confirmed. Team 3 ready. Jiwon's voice cut through the channel, calm and commanding. Remember, this is an extraction, not a raid. We get the civilians out clean. No one gets hurt except the people who deserve it. Imani touched the wire taped beneath her shirt, feeling the reassuring presence of the device that would allow Jiwon to track her location inside the restaurant. The plan was simple in theory, terrifying in execution. She would go back inside Celestine's, trigger a fire alarm to evacuate the building, and in the chaos, Jiwon's people would secure the modified gas line and identify everyone involved in Lee Sung-woo's operation. The complexity came in the final phase, making Lee believe the USB drive and Imani had been destroyed in an explosion that never actually happened. You don't have to do this, Jiwon had said when they were preparing. I can send someone else in. Someone trained for this. They won't get past the front door. Imani had replied. I work there. I have access. And if someone's going to risk their life on this plan, it should be me. It's my brother's legacy on the line. Now, standing across from the restaurant with her heart hammering and her palms sweating, she wondered if courage and stupidity were actually the same thing. Imani. Jiwon's voice was soft in her ear. You're doing the right thing. Tell me that when I'm not dead. I will. Every day for as long as you'll listen. There was something in his voice, a promise that went beyond tonight's operation, beyond the immediate danger. Something that acknowledged the connection forming between them, built on her brother's memory and their own desperate alliance. Imani crossed the street and walked toward Celestine's employee entrance, forcing her breathing to steady. The kitchen was exactly as she'd left it hours ago. Chef Laurent was screaming at a line cook about overseared scallops. Servers rushed between stations, grabbing plates. The dishwasher, the new one who'd started yesterday, the one Jiwon said was part of Lee's team, was positioned near the modified gas line, pretending to scrub pots while watching the clock. None of them noticed Imani slip in and grab an apron from the hook. Where the hell have you been? Chef Laurent barked. I thought you went home with a migraine. Felt better, Imani said smoothly. Figured you'd need help with the late rush. Table 6 needs their entrees in 3 minutes. Move. Imani grabbed the ticket and started plating, her hands working on muscle memory while her mind raced through the plan's timing. The fire alarm was in the hallway near the restrooms. She had to reach it without drawing attention, pull it, and get out before the evacuation turned chaotic. But first, she needed confirmation that Jiwon's people were in position to secure the gas line before the explosion could happen. Team 1? She subvocalized, barely moving her lips. In position, Soo-jin's voice confirmed. We have eyes on the dishwasher. He's arming something. Looks like a remote detonator. Imani's blood turned to ice. The plan had assumed a timer, not a remote trigger. Change of plan. Jiwon's voice cut through, sharp with command. Team 2, prepare to neutralize the dishwasher on my mark. Imani, you need to pull that alarm now. We don't have time for subtlety. Imani looked around the kitchen. At least a dozen people were within blast radius if the modified gas line exploded. Servers, cooks, porters, people she'd worked alongside for 3 years. People who had families and dreams and no idea they were seconds away from becoming statistics. She dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered on the tile floor with a crash that made everyone turn. In the heartbeat of shocked silence that followed, Imani ran. She burst through the kitchen doors into the dining room, weaving between tables of startled patrons. Behind her, Chef Laurent was shouting. A server tried to intercept her. She dodged, her brother's training guiding her body through movements she'd practiced 100 times but never used for real. The fire alarm was 10 feet away. 5 feet. She reached for it. A hand clamped down on her shoulder and yanked her backward. Imani slammed into a hard chest. Arms locked around her, immobilizing her. She caught a glimpse of the server who'd grabbed her, except he wasn't a server. His eyes were cold, professional. His grip was trained. "Got her," he said into a concealed microphone. Target secured. Imani drove her heel down onto his instep with all her weight, exactly like her brother had taught her. The man's grip loosened fractionally. She twisted, broke free, and her hand slapped the fire alarm. Sirens shrieked through Celestine's. Emergency lights strobed. Recorded evacuation instructions blared over speakers. The carefully orchestrated dinner service dissolved into controlled panic as patrons began moving toward exits. Imani tried to follow them. The server, the operative, grabbed her again. This time she was ready. She drove her elbow backward into his solar plexus, heard him grunt, and spun to face him. "Who do you work for?" she demanded. His hand was moving toward his jacket. Toward a weapon. Imani didn't think. She grabbed the nearest object, a water carafe, from a table and swung it at his head. Glass shattered against his temple. He went down hard, blood streaming from a gash above his eye. Around them, chaos intensified. People were screaming now, shoving toward exits. The fire alarm continued its mechanical shriek. And through it all, Imani heard Jiwon's voice in her ear, urgent and proud. "That's my girl. Now get to the kitchen exit. We have the gas line secured, but there are more of Lee's people in the building. You're not safe until you're out." Imani ran. Through the dining room, past the bar, toward the kitchen, and stopped dead. Standing in the kitchen doorway, blocking her escape, was a man she recognized from the files on Elijah's USB drive, one of Lee Sang-woo's lieutenants. Mid-40s, scar bisecting his left eyebrow, holding a gun that was pointed directly at her chest. "Elijah Lawson's sister," he said in Korean. "I wondered when you'd finally surface." "I don't know what you're talking about," Imani replied in English, playing dumb. "Save it." He switched to English, his accent thick. "You pulled that alarm. You shut down our operation. Which means you know. Which means your brother told you where he hid his evidence before he died." "My brother told me nothing." "Then you won't mind coming with me so we can discuss it somewhere quieter." "Team 2. Jiwon's voice was tight in her ear. "Imani has a hostile at the kitchen entrance. Gray suit, weapon drawn. Neutralize immediately." But before Jiwon's people could move, the lieutenant stepped forward, grabbed Imani's arm, and pressed the gun against her ribs. "Walk," he ordered. "Back door. My car is waiting." Imani walked. Not because she was giving up, but because she was calculating. The man's grip on her arm was tight but not professional. He was holding the gun too close to her body, close enough that if she moved fast, she could redirect the barrel. Her brother's voice echoed in her memory. "If someone puts a gun on you, they've already made a mistake. They're close enough to hurt, which means you're close enough to fight." They were 3 steps from the back door when Imani made her move. She grabbed the lieutenant's wrist with both hands, twisted hard to the left while dropping her weight. The gun fired deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wide, punching through the ceiling instead of her chest. Imani drove her knee into his groin. He doubled over with a sound like air being forced from a punctured tire. The gun clattered to the floor. She didn't try to grab it. She just ran, bursting through the back door into the alley where this entire nightmare had started 2 hours ago. Jiwon was there. He caught her as she stumbled out, his hands steadying her, his eyes scanning for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, but there's..." The lieutenant appeared in the doorway, bloody and furious. He'd retrieved his gun. Jiwon moved faster than physics should allow. He shoved Imani behind him and pulled his own weapon in one fluid motion. 2 shots, crisp and precise. The lieutenant went down screaming, both kneecaps shattered. "Non-lethal," Jiwon said calmly. "I want him to answer questions." Sujin emerged from the shadows with 2 other operatives. They secured the lieutenant with professional efficiency, zip-tying his wrists and ankles while he cursed in Korean. "Kitchen is clear," she reported to Jiwon. "Gas line neutralized. We have 6 of Lee's people in custody, including the dishwasher. The restaurant is evacuated. No civilian casualties. And Lee Sang-woo? No sign of him in the building. But..." She hesitated. "We found something else. A secondary device in the wine cellar. Not a gas bomb. Something chemical. If the fire alarm hadn't gone off, If that detonator had been triggered, everyone in the building would have been exposed to aerosolized VX nerve agent. The air left Imani's lungs. VX was military-grade poison, lethal in microscopic doses. The kind of thing you only used when you wanted to kill everyone in a building and make it look like a terrorist attack rather than a targeted assassination. Lee wasn't trying to kill me quietly, she whispered. He was planning a massacre. He was planning to send a message. Jiwon corrected, his voice hard. That anyone who crosses him burns. That there are no sanctuaries, no safe spaces, no lines he won't cross. Then we send one back, Imani said. We make him think his plan worked. We make him believe I'm dead. The USB drive is destroyed, and he's safe. And then we destroy him. Jiwon studied her for a long moment. You understand what you're agreeing to. If we stage your death, you can't go back to your old life. Imani Lawson dies tonight in this alley. Whatever comes next, whoever you become, it's permanent. Imani thought about her studio apartment, her job at Celestine's, the small, safe, invisible life she'd built from the ruins of her brother's death. She thought about 3 years of being watched and manipulated and used as bait. She thought about Elijah, dying in an alley to protect her from exactly this moment. My brother gave me 3 years of borrowed time, she said quietly. I'm not going to waste them pretending I'm still the person I was before. If we're doing this, we do it right. We make Lee pay for everyone he's killed, everyone he's hurt, and we make sure he can never do it again. Jiwon smiled, that sharp, dangerous smile that was becoming familiar. Then let's burn his empire to ash. Crisis. Confrontation. 32 to 050 to 0. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in strategic deception. Jiwon's people staged the scene perfectly. An accidental explosion in Celestine's wine cellar, triggered by the gas leak, or so the official story would claim. Imani's body was never found because there was nothing left to find, just blood evidence. Her own, donated and planted, and her work ID badge, scorched but recognizable. The news covered it as a tragedy. Faulty gas line, inadequate safety protocols, 1 employee dead and 14 others injured in the blast. The city mourned. Celestine's owners issued statements about negligence investigations and compensation for victims' families. And in the shadows, Lee Sang-woo celebrated. Jiwon's surveillance picked up the phone call Lee made to his lieutenants 3 hours after the explosion. The Lawson problem is solved. The evidence is destroyed. We're secure. But he'd made one critical mistake in his relief. He dropped his guard. For the first time in 3 years, Lee Sang-woo was operating as if he had nothing to fear. His communications became less encrypted, his movements less cautious, his operations more visible. He was exposing himself, and Jiwon was watching everything. This is the list, Jiwon said, spreading documents across the table in his Pilsen safe house. It was 3 a.m., 40 hours after Imani's supposed death, and they'd been working non-stop to analyze Elijah's files. The documents showed a web of connections so vast it was hard to believe one man had coordinated it all. Restaurants, import-export businesses, real estate companies, charitable foundations, all of them fronts, all of them funneling money through layered transactions designed to make dirty cash look clean. Your brother identified 63 distinct businesses in Lee's network, Jiwon continued. But he did something brilliant. He found the keystone, the single point of failure that, if removed, would collapse everything else. What is it? Imani asked. A bank. Not a legitimate institution, but a private lending operation that Lee controls through proxies. Every business in his network owes money to this bank. Every transaction flows through it. It's the hub that connects all the spokes. Jiwon pulled up financial records. If we seize this bank's assets and expose its operations, we don't just damage Lee's empire, we burn it completely. Every business owner he's extorted, every partner he's manipulated, every politician he's bought, they all become liabilities scrambling to save themselves. But seizing a bank requires law enforcement, courts, warrants, unless we give them no choice but to act. Jiwon's smile was sharp. Your brother built a kill switch into his documentation. A package of evidence so comprehensive, so meticulously documented, that if it goes public, the FBI and IRS have to investigate. The scandal would be too big to bury. So we release it. We send the files to every news outlet and federal agency in the country. We could. But that gives Lee time to destroy evidence, eliminate witnesses, disappear his assets. Jiwon leaned forward. I want something better. I want him to watch his empire crumble, while he's powerless to stop it. I want him to know that Elijah Lawson beat him from beyond the grave. How? We hit the bank during Lee's biggest transaction of the year. Tomorrow night, he's hosting a charity gala at the Chicago Art Institute, a fundraiser for Korean cultural preservation. It's legitimate on the surface, but in reality, it's where he collects donations from every business owner he's extorting. Millions of dollars will flow through that bank's accounts in one evening. Imani understood where this was going. And if the bank freezes during that transaction, every donor becomes a witness to Lee's operation. Every transaction becomes evidence. And the chaos will force Lee to physically go to the bank to try to fix it, which is when we'll have him isolated, vulnerable, and recorded on every camera in the building. This is insane. This is justice. Jiwon's expression was fierce. Your brother couldn't finish this because they killed him before he was ready. But we can finish it, together. If you're willing to step into the light one more time. What do you need me to do? I need you to be dead, Jiwon said, until the exact moment when Lee needs to see a ghost. The next evening, Imani stood in front of a mirror in a room she'd never seen before, one of Jiwon's many safe locations, and barely recognized herself. Soojin had transformed her appearance with professional precision. Her natural hair was hidden beneath a sleek black wig cut in a severe bob. Contact lenses changed her dark brown eyes to lighter amber. Her makeup was dramatic, emphasizing different features, changing the shape of her face through contouring and shadows. She wore a black cocktail dress that cost more than 3 months of her old salary, elegant and expensive. Diamond earrings that Jiwon had insisted were borrowed, not bought. Heels that added 3 inches to her height and completely changed her posture and walk. You look like someone who belongs at a charity gala for millionaires, Soojin said with approval. No one will recognize you as a dead waitress. That's the point, Imani murmured. Jiwon appeared in the doorway. He'd changed too into a tailored black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. But it was the way he looked at Imani that made her breath catch. You're beautiful, he said simply. You're biased. I'm accurate. He crossed to her, adjusted one of the diamond earrings with gentle fingers. These have microphones. We'll hear everything you hear. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you pull the left earring off and my people will extract you immediately. Nothing's going to go wrong. Imani. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I'm asking you to walk into a room full of criminals who want you dead. I'm asking you to confront the man who killed your brother. I need you to understand that if something goes wrong, if I have to choose between catching Lee and keeping you alive, I'm choosing you every single time. The intensity in his voice made something in Imani's chest ache. Somewhere in the past 2 days, between planning revenge and piecing together her brother's legacy, she'd started to care about Park Ji-won, started to trust him with more than just her life, with her truth, her anger, her grief, started to wonder what might exist between them when the blood was washed away and the danger was past. Don't choose, she said. We end this tonight, together. No compromises. Together, Ji-won agreed and kissed her. It was gentle and fierce at once, a promise wrapped in urgency. When they broke apart, Imani felt steadier. Ready, let's go burn an empire, she said. The Chicago Art Institute was ablaze with light and elegance. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, depositing Chicago's wealthy elite beneath classical columns that had witnessed a century of cultural preservation. Tonight, they would witness something else entirely. Imani and Ji-won arrived separately, him through the main entrance as Park Ji-won, legitimate businessman and major donor, her through a side entrance as Naomi Kim, a wealthy Korean-American art collector from Los Angeles making her first appearance in Chicago social circles. The cover identity was airtight. Soojin had built it over the past day. Social media accounts backdated 6 months, appearances in California society pages, a donation history to various cultural institutions. On paper, Naomi Kim was exactly the kind of wealthy donor Lee Sang-woo courted. In reality, she was Imani Lawson, wearing her brother's vengeance like armor. The gala was exactly what she expected. Crystal chandeliers, classical music, servers in white gloves circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The wealthy mingled with the powerful, discussing art and culture while conducting transactions that had nothing to do with either. Imani moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, a skill learned from 3 years of serving people who never looked at her face. She listened to conversations, cataloged faces, compared them to the names in Elijah's files. Every third person in this room was connected to Lee's operation. Business owners paying protection money disguised as donations. Politicians receiving campaign funding laundered through charitable contributions. Legitimate philanthropists who had no idea they were rubbing elbows with criminals. Target acquired, Jiwon's voice murmured in her ear through the earring microphone. Lee Sang-woo just arrived. East Gallery, surrounded by city council members and his security detail. Imani turned, scanning the crowd. She spotted him easily, the silver-haired man from Elijah's photographs, elegant in a custom tuxedo, smiling like a benevolent grandfather, while his security team maintained a discreet perimeter. This was the man who'd ordered her brother tortured and killed, who'd tried to bomb a restaurant full of innocent people, who'd built an empire on suffering and called it culture. Looking at him, Imani felt something cold and focused crystallize in her chest. Not rage. Rage was messy, uncontrolled. This was something purer, something that her brother had tried to teach her about in his final weeks, but she'd been too young to understand. This was purpose. "I'm moving to intercept," she said quietly, knowing Jiwon would hear. "Be careful. His security is professional. So am I." Imani wove through the crowd, champagne flute in hand, playing the role of a wealthy socialite exploring the gallery. She positioned herself near a painting Lee was admiring, a traditional Korean landscape, all misty mountains and subtle brushwork. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said in Korean, her accent deliberately Americanized. "Though I always wonder if we appreciate these pieces for their artistry or just their cultural nostalgia." Lee turned to her, his smile practiced and warm. "An excellent question, miss. Kim, Naomi Kim." She offered her hand. "I'm visiting from Los Angeles. A friend recommended I attend tonight's event, said the company would be as exceptional as the cause." "Your friend has excellent taste." Lee's handshake was firm, his eyes assessing her with the calculation of a man who measured everyone's value. "Are you a collector?" "Of experiences more than objects, though I do appreciate traditional Korean art. My grandfather was a painter in Seoul before emigrating." The lie flowed easily. "He always said that art was the soul of a culture made visible." A wise man. Lee's attention sharpened slightly. "Kim. There are several prominent Kim families in Los Angeles. Which branch claims you?" This was the test. The moment when her cover either held or shattered. "The branch that values privacy," Imani said with a slight smile. "Wealth and notoriety don't always mix well. I prefer to appreciate culture quietly rather than making myself a spectacle." It was a perfect deflection, wealthy enough to belong, private enough to avoid detailed questions. Lee's expression showed approval. "A woman after my own philosophy. Too many of our generation's elite mistake visibility for influence." He gestured to the painting. "This piece is 14th century. Goryeo dynasty. I'm considering acquiring it for my private collection." "How much?" "Money is irrelevant when preserving heritage. Everything has a price, Mr. Lee. The question is whether the seller understands what they're trading." Lee studied her with new interest. "You have an unusual perspective, Miss Kim. Most collectors focus on acquisition. You seem more interested in transaction philosophy. I had a teacher once who believed understanding value was more important than possessing it." Imani met his eyes. "He died before he could finish my education. I've been searching for someone to continue his lessons." "What was his name?" "Imani Lawson." The name hit Lee like a physical blow. His expression barely changed, just the slightest widening of eyes, the fractional tightening of jaw muscles. But Imani saw it. Saw the recognition, the shock, the rapid recalculation. "I'm not familiar with that name," Lee said carefully. "Strange. He knew you quite well. Studied your business practices. Called you a master of turning valueless things into assets." Imani took a sip of champagne. "Of course he's dead now. A terrible mugging 3 years ago. The police never found who did it." Lee's security detail was already moving closer, responding to some invisible signal. But Lee held up a hand, stopping them. "You're not Naomi Kim," he said quietly in Korean. "No," Imani replied in the same language. "I'm the ghost you tried to kill 2 days ago. I'm Elijah Lawson's sister, and I'm here to deliver his final message." Lee's face went from calculated charm to cold fury in the space of a heartbeat. "You should have died in that restaurant." "I should have, but your people made a mistake. They assumed I was alone." Imani smiled. "They forgot that my brother had friends, people who owed him debts, people who've spent 3 years waiting for the chance to repay those debts by destroying you." Bold words from a woman surrounded by my people. "Look around, Mr. Lee. Really look." Lee's eyes scanned the gallery. His expression changed as he recognized faces he'd been too confident to notice before. Half of his security detail had been replaced by Jiwon's operatives. The servers moving through the crowd were armed, The string quartet in the corner included 2 former Korean National Police officers. You've been infiltrated, Imani continued. Your safe locations are compromised. Your bank accounts are frozen. And in approximately, she checked her watch, 3 minutes, every news outlet in Chicago will receive a comprehensive file documenting your money laundering operation, your real estate fraud, your extortion, your murders, your bluffing. Am I? Check your phone, Mr. Lee. I think you'll find some interesting notifications. Lee pulled out his phone with hands that had started to shake. His face went white as he scrolled through alerts. That's your bank's security system notifying you of unauthorized access. That's your accountant asking why the IRS is seizing business records. That's your lawyer reporting that the FBI just raided your primary office. Imani leaned closer. And that's just the beginning. By morning, every business owner you've extorted will have evidence of your crimes. Every politician you've bought will be running from association with you. Every person in this room who's ever feared you will realize you're just a man who used their fear as currency. I'll kill you, Lee hissed. I'll kill everyone who helped you. No, you won't. Because the moment you try, this happens. Imani pressed a button on her bracelet, a small device that looked like jewelry, but was actually a trigger. Every screen in the Art Institute simultaneously switched from showing classical art to displaying a video. Elijah Lawson's face filled dozens of monitors, recorded 3 years ago. Haggard but determined. My name is Elijah Lawson, the video began. I'm a forensic accountant working under contract for the Korean National Police. If you're seeing this, it means I'm dead, and my sister has survived to trigger this message. What follows is a complete documentation of Lee Sang-woo's criminal enterprise. Every transaction, every extortion, every murder. Consider this my final testimony. The gala descended into chaos. Climax, 50-0, 62-0. Federal agents poured into the Art Institute within minutes. They'd been coordinating with Jiwon for weeks, waiting for enough evidence to justify a raid. Elijah's files released simultaneously to the FBI, IRS, Chicago PD, and every major news outlet gave them exactly what they needed. Lee Sang-woo tried to run. He made it to the parking garage before Jiwon intercepted him. Imani watched through the security feed as the 2 men faced each other beneath fluorescent lights, surrounded by Jiwon's operatives. It's over, Jiwon said simply. Your empire is gone. Your accounts are frozen. Your people are scattering. And you're going to prison for the rest of your life. This is revenge for your father's business partner, Lee spat. You've never forgiven me for taking his place. This is justice for Elijah Lawson, for every person you've killed or threatened or destroyed. Jiwon's voice was cold. I learned something from working with Elijah. He taught me that power without principle is just tyranny. That building something that lasts requires more than fear and violence. You could have been great, Lee. Instead, you'll be forgotten. Lee lunged, but he was 65 years old, fighting a man half his age who'd been trained in violence since childhood. Jiwon caught his wrist, twisted, and put him on the ground with professional efficiency. Federal agents are 30 seconds away, Jiwon said. You're going to surrender peacefully. You're going to confess to ordering Elijah Lawson's murder. And you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that a dead man beat you. I'll make a deal. I'll give them names. Everyone in the organization. You'll give them nothing they don't already have. Elijah documented everything. Jiwon pulled Lee to his feet and handed him to arriving FBI agents. Enjoy prison. Imani watched Lee being led away in handcuffs and felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Closure. Not revenge that would have required her to hurt him personally, to make him suffer the way Elijah had suffered. This was different. This was seeing justice happen through evidence and law, through the system working the way it was supposed to when people like her brother refused to let it be corrupted. Jiwon found her in the gallery 20 minutes later. The gala guests had been evacuated. Federal agents were securing evidence. News vans were gathering outside, drawn by the spectacle of Chicago's most prominent philanthropist being arrested for money laundering and murder. It's done, he said quietly. It's done, Imani agreed. They stood there in the emptying gallery, surrounded by classical Korean art that had witnessed their manufactured revenge, and Imani felt the weight of 3 years finally lifting from her shoulders. What happens now? She asked. Now the legal process takes over. Lee will be prosecuted. His organization will be dismantled. The people he hurt will finally get restitution. Jiwon moved closer. And you get to decide who you want to be now that you're not living in your brother's shadow. I don't know who that is anymore. Neither do I. But I'd like to find out. Together. if you're willing. Imani looked at him, this man who'd kept her alive out of debt and kept her close out of something deeper. This man who'd helped her burn down an empire and honor her brother's memory in the same night. Together, she said. But on one condition. Name it. No more $1 tips. Jiwon laughed a real laugh, bright and genuine. I promise to tip appropriately from now on. Good, because I'm expensive. I know. I've seen your brother's accounting. You're worth every penny. He kissed her then, in the gallery full of classical art and federal agents, and Imani kissed him back with the certainty that this, whatever this was becoming, was real in a way that transcended the violence and danger that had brought them together. Resolution, emotional payoff, 62 to 0, 70 to 0. 6 months later, Imani stood in front of the community center her brother had always dreamed of opening. The Imani Lawson Financial Literacy Center occupied a renovated building in the neighborhood where they'd grown up. It offered free accounting classes, small business consulting, and support for families navigating debt and financial exploitation. It was funded by the reward money Imani had received for helping dismantle Lee Sang-woo's organization, a 7-figure payment she'd immediately turned into a non-profit, honoring her brother's belief that education was the best defense against predators like Lee. He would have loved this, Jiwon said, coming to stand beside her. He'd been inside reviewing security systems with Sujin, making sure the center was protected from any remaining elements of Lee's old organization. He would have complained that I was being too idealistic, Imani corrected. Then he would have helped me anyway. Sounds like someone else I know. Imani smiled. Over the past 6 months, she and Jiwon had built something unexpected. A partnership that balanced his strategic thinking with her idealism, his resources with her principles. They'd started dismantling other operations like Lee's, using Elijah's methods but with legal support this time. It turned out forensic accounting skills were hereditary. Imani had discovered she had her brother's gift for reading financial patterns, for seeing the stories hidden in numbers. Combined with Jiwon's knowledge of the criminal world and his family's legitimate business empire, they'd become a formidable team. I have something for you, Jiwon said, pulling out a small box. Imani's breath caught. Jiwon, it's not what you think. Well, it is, but not yet. Open it. Inside the box was her brother's jade pendant, restored to its original condition, but instead of a USB drive, it now held a different treasure, a tiny photograph of Elijah and Imani from her college graduation. Both of them smiling, both of them whole. Your brother's evidence is archived with the FBI, Jiwon explained. This belongs back with you, but filled with something that represents life instead of death, hope instead of revenge. Imani's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Look at the back. She flipped the pendant over. Engraved in elegant Korean characters was a message. 가족은 피가 아니라 선택이다. Family is not blood but choice. You chose me, Jiwon said softly. When you had every reason to run, to hide, to let someone else fight this battle, you chose to stand beside me. You chose to finish what Elijah started. You chose to transform grief into purpose. And you chose to honor a debt to a dead man by keeping his sister alive. No, Jiwon's hands cupped her face. I chose you because you're brilliant and fierce and exactly the kind of person who makes me want to build something better than what I inherited. The debt was paid the night I warned you about Celestine's. Everything since then has been about you. Even the revenge, especially the revenge. You needed it, deserved it, and I wanted to be the one who helped you claim it. Imani kissed him then, tasting salt from her own tears and the sweetness of closure and the promise of a future that looked nothing like her past. When they broke apart, she fastened the pendant around her neck. It settled against her heart lighter now, transformed from burden to blessing. What's next? She asked. Whatever we choose. The center opens next week. My legitimate businesses need someone who understands both accounting and ethics. And I have it on good authority that there are at least a dozen operations like Lee's still running in Chicago. Sounds like we have work to do. Sounds like we have a life to build. Imani looked at the community center, at the building bearing her brother's name, at the future she'd clawed back from the edge of death and transformed into purpose. 3 years ago, a man in an expensive suit had left her a $1 tip and changed everything. He'd turned her invisible life visible, her grief into power, her fear into courage. He'd seen her when the world refused to look, protected her when she didn't know she needed protecting, and when she'd finally understood the game being played around her, he'd given her the tools to not just survive it but to win. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For the worst tip I ever received. Jiwon laughed. I told you it was strategic. It was an insult. It was an invitation. To step into your power. To claim your brother's legacy. To become who you were always meant to be. His arms came around her, and you accepted it spectacularly. Somewhere in the city, Lee Sang-woo sat in a federal prison cell, awaiting trial for crimes documented in such meticulous detail that his lawyers had already advised him to plead guilty. Somewhere in the archives, Elijah Lawson's evidence continued to lead to new arrests, new prosecutions, new justice for people who thought they'd never receive it. And here, in front of a center that would teach the next generation to fight back against predators who used money as a weapon, Imani Lawson stood beside Park Ji-won and felt something she'd thought died with her brother. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. Not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter written in their own words, on their own terms, together. The waitress and the dragon. The ghost and the guardian. The woman who'd worn her brother's vengeance like armor and the man who'd helped her transform it into legacy. They'd burned an empire to ash. Now they would build something better from the ruins. Together. The first student to walk through the doors of the Elijah Lawson Financial Literacy Center was a 19-year-old girl named Maya, who reminded Imani so much of herself that it hurt to look at her. Single mother. Working 2 jobs. Drowning in predatory loans she'd taken out to pay for her mother's medical bills. The kind of desperate that made people easy targets for exactly the sort of exploitation Elijah had spent his life fighting against. I don't know if I'm in the right place, Maya said, standing in the doorway like she might bolt at any second. I saw the flyer at the bus stop. It said free financial counseling, but nothing's actually free, right? What's the catch? Imani understood that suspicion, had lived it herself for years. The catch is that you have to show up, she said gently. You have to do the work. You have to believe that you deserve better than the situation you're in. That's the only price we charge. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I owe $47,000. The interest keeps compounding faster than I can pay. They're threatening to garnish my wages. And if that happens, I can't afford daycare. And if I can't afford daycare... Sit down, Imani said. Let's look at your numbers. 3 hours later, Imani had restructured Maya's debt, identified predatory terms that were actually illegal, and connected her with a pro bono lawyer who specialized in consumer protection. It wouldn't erase the debt overnight, but it would give her breathing room, a chance to fight back instead of just drowning. How did you learn to do this? Maya asked as she was leaving, holding a folder full of resources and a payment plan that was actually manageable. My brother taught me that numbers tell stories, Imani said, and once you can read the story, you can change the ending. Was he a teacher? He was a hero. And he died trying to protect people like you from people who weaponize debt. Imani walked Maya to the door. Come back next week. We'll review your progress. And Maya, you're going to be okay. I promise. After Maya left, Imani stood in the empty center and felt her brother's presence like a physical warmth. This was what he'd wanted. Not revenge, not justice through violence, but transformation. Taking the weapons used against the vulnerable and turning them into shields. You're good at this, Ji-won said from the doorway. She hadn't heard him arrive, but she was getting used to the way he moved silent when he wanted to be, present when she needed him. I'm good at reading patterns. She needed someone to see the pattern and show her the way out. Like someone did for you. Like you did for me. Imani turned to face him. 6 months ago, I was serving overpriced fusion cuisine and pretending I wasn't drowning in questions about my brother's death. Now I'm running a nonprofit and dismantling financial exploitation networks with a man who used to be Korean organized crime royalty. My therapist is having a field day with this character arc. You're seeing a therapist? Ji-won looked pleased. That's healthy. You sound surprised. I sound proud. Trauma doesn't heal through revenge alone. Elijah knew that. It's why he built this plan, not just to destroy Lee, but to create something that would outlast the destruction. Ji-won crossed to her, and Imani noticed he was carrying a leather portfolio. Speaking of creating things, I have a proposition. Should I be worried? You should be interested. He opened the portfolio, revealing architectural plans. Remember how I said my legitimate businesses need someone who understands both accounting and ethics? Vaguely. I was distracted by the whole burning down a criminal empire thing. I want to create a new division of Park Enterprises. Social investment. We use our resources to fund projects like this center: financial literacy, small business support, community development. But we do it strategically, targeting areas where criminal organizations typically recruit. We don't just help people. We cut off the pipeline that feeds operations like Lee's. Imani studied the plans. They were comprehensive, ambitious, exactly the kind of large-scale thinking that Jiwon excelled at. This would cost millions. I have millions, and after we seized Lee's assets, we have his millions too. The courts ruled that his wealth was obtained through criminal activity. It's being redistributed to victims and community programs. You want to use blood money to build something good. I want to transform it, like we transformed your grief, like we transformed Elijah's evidence from a weapon into a legacy. Jiwon's hand covered hers on the portfolio. But I can't do this alone. I need someone who understands the community, who knows what it's like to be vulnerable, who can look at numbers and see the human beings behind them. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership, equal stake, equal decision-making power. Your name on the letterhead beside mine. Lawson and Park Enterprises, Imani said slowly, testing how it sounded. Park and Lawson, Jiwon corrected. Alphabetical order. I'm not precious about billing. That's very evolved of you. I'm trying to be better than what I inherited. His voice grew serious. 6 months ago, you asked me what happens next. This is my answer. We build something that matters. Something that would make Elijah proud. Something that proves good people can win without becoming the monsters they fight. Imani looked at the plans, at the vision Jiwon had spent months developing while she was focused on opening the center. He'd been thinking about their future, about a life beyond revenge and danger and violence. There's one condition, she said. Name it. We operate completely above board. No gray areas. No ends justify the means. If we're going to help people, we do it the right way, even when the right way is harder. Agreed. Though I reserve the right to be strategically ruthless with people who try to exploit our clients, as long as the ruthlessness is legal. Lawyers will be involved in every decision. I've already hired 3 of them. Imani laughed. You were confident I'd say yes. I was hopeful you'd say yes. There's a difference. Jiwon's hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I'm trying to build a life here, Imani. With you. A real life. Not just a series of operations and revenges. And I know it's complicated because of how we started. Because of Elijah. Because of everything that's happened. But I need you to know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with debt or obligation. Then what does it have to do with? You. Just you. Your mind. Your strength. The way you look at impossible situations and find the third option. The way you transform pain into purpose. The way you make me want to be someone who deserves to stand beside you. Imani's breath caught. They'd been dancing around this for months, the attraction, the partnership, the growing certainty that what existed between them was deeper than convenience or strategy. I love you, she said, the words escaping before she could analyze them, or doubt them, or dress them up in anything other than simple truth. I don't know when it happened. Maybe in the alley behind Celestine's when you chose to warn me instead of letting me die. Maybe when you held me while I cried about my brother. Maybe when you handed me a weapon and trusted me to use it. But I love you, Jiwon. And that terrifies me. Why? Because everyone I've loved, I've lost. My parents. My brother. I don't know if I can survive losing you too. Then don't lose me. Jiwon's voice was fierce. Choose me. Every day. The way I'm choosing you. The way we're choosing this life we're building. Love doesn't have to end in loss, Imani. Sometimes it's just beginning. He kissed her then, and it was different from the kisses they'd shared before. Not desperate or claiming or born from adrenaline. This was a promise. A commitment. A declaration that whatever they were becoming, it was real and worth protecting. When they broke apart, Imani was crying and laughing at the same time. I'm saying yes. To the partnership. To building something that matters. To you. Good. Because I've already signed the papers putting your name on everything. You're stuck with me now. Legally binding partnerships. How romantic. I'm Korean. We express love through practical commitment. But his smile was soft, though I do have something less practical. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Not a ring box, something different. When he opened it, Imani saw a pair of platinum earrings, modern and elegant, each one set with a small black diamond. These aren't engagement earrings, Jiwon said quickly. I'm not proposing. Not yet. Not until we've had at least a year of normal life together where no one's trying to kill us. Very reasonable. But these are a promise. That I'm in this for the long term. that I'm building toward a future where I can propose properly, where we can have the life your brother wanted for you, safety, partnership, love, where you can just be Imani instead of a ghost or a weapon or a target. Imani took the earrings, feeling their weight. What are the black diamonds for? They're called carbonado diamonds, formed under extreme pressure and heat. Technically, they're industrial diamonds used for cutting and drilling because they're nearly indestructible. His smile was self-deprecating. I thought it was fitting. You were formed under extreme pressure too. And you became something beautiful and unbreakable. You're such a nerd. I'm a nerd who loves you. I love you too. Imani replaced her current earrings with his gift. How do they look? Like you were meant to wear them. Jiwon? Yes. Thank you for the $1 tip. It changed my life. Thank you for not ignoring it. You saved mine. 3 months later, Imani stood in front of the Chicago City Council, presenting the proposal for Park and Lawson Community Investment's first major project, a financial literacy program for public schools. She'd been nervous before the presentation started. These were politicians, many of whom had likely been in Lee Sang-woo's pocket before his arrest. They had every reason to be skeptical of programs started by people connected to criminal investigations. But Imani had learned something from her brother and from Jiwon. Numbers didn't lie. And when you presented people with undeniable evidence that your solution worked, they had to listen. In the 3 months since the Elijah Lawson Center opened, she said, clicking to her next slide, we've served 237 clients. We've identified over $3 million in predatory lending practices. We've helped restructure debt for families who were on the verge of bankruptcy. And most importantly, we've educated people on how to recognize and resist financial exploitation. She pulled up the next slide, testimonials from clients, many of whom had been targeted by operations similar to Lee's. These are the people who fall through the cracks, who make one desperate choice and spend years paying for it, who get trapped in cycles of debt because no one taught them how money actually works. Miss Lawson, one councilwoman interrupted, this all sounds wonderful, but implementing this in public schools would cost the city money we don't have in the budget. It wouldn't cost the city anything. Park and Lawson Enterprises is funding the entire program. We provide the curriculum, the teachers, the materials. All we're asking for is permission to operate in public schools and cooperation from the administration. And what does your company get out of this? We get a generation of financially literate students who are less vulnerable to exploitation. We get communities that are more stable because people understand how to manage money. We get to honor the memory of a man who died trying to protect people from predators. Imani met the councilwoman's eyes. And if we're being completely transparent, we get good publicity. We get to demonstrate that businesses can profit while still serving their communities. We get to prove that ethics and success aren't mutually exclusive. The honesty seemed to disarm them. The council voted unanimously to approve a pilot program in 10 schools. Afterward, Jiwon met her outside the chambers. You were magnificent. I was terrified. You were magnificent and terrified. The two aren't mutually exclusive. He pulled her close. Elijah would be so proud. I hope so. Imani leaned into him, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right. If this is really what he wanted. You're teaching people to fight back using the same weapons he used. Knowledge, numbers, truth. You're protecting the vulnerable. You're building something that will outlast both of you. Jiwon's arms tightened. Trust me, Imani. This is exactly what he wanted. That night, they celebrated at a small Korean restaurant in Lincoln Park. Not fancy, not expensive, just authentic and warm, and run by a family who'd known Jiwon since he was a child. The owner, a grandmother in her 70s named Mrs. Cho, fussed over them like they were her own children. She brought out dishes they hadn't ordered, insisted they eat more, and asked pointed questions about when Jiwon was going to stop being stupid and marry that beautiful girl who's clearly too good for him. Mrs. Cho, Jiwon protested in Korean, we've only been together for 9 months. Your grandfather proposed to your grandmother after 3 weeks. Don't blame your slowness on being modern. You're just scared. I'm not scared. I'm being respectful. Imani has been through trauma. She needs time. I'm sitting right here. Imani interjected in Korean. And I can understand everything you're saying. Mrs. Cho's face lit up. You speak Korean? Oh, Jiwon, you didn't tell me she speaks Korean. This changes everything. How's your cooking? Do you know how to make kimchi? I'm learning. Good, good. A woman who speaks Korean and learns kimchi making is a woman who respects culture. Jiwon, marry her before someone smarter steals her away. After dinner, They walked along the lake, hand in hand, the Chicago skyline glittering across the water. "I'm sorry about Mrs. Cho," Jiwon said. "She means well, but she has no sense of boundaries. Don't apologize. She's lovely. And she's right, you are being slow." Jiwon stopped walking. "What? I'm not saying I want you to propose tomorrow, but I'm also not saying I need years of normal life before we can talk about a future." Imani turned to face him. "I know what I want, Jiwon. I want to build this company with you. I want to wake up beside you. I want to argue about strategy and kiss you until we forget what we were arguing about. I want to honor my brother's memory while creating my own life. And I want to do all of it with you." "Imani, I'm not finished. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know we met in the worst possible circumstances and built this relationship on top of revenge and trauma and danger. But I also know that you're the best man I've ever met. You're ethical and brilliant, and you make me feel safe and challenged and valued all at once. So yes. When you're ready to propose, my answer is going to be yes. I'm just letting you know in advance, so you can plan accordingly." Jiwon stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing deep, genuine laughter that echoed across the empty lakefront. "You're incredible," he said, pulling her close. "You just proposed to me by telling me you'll accept my future proposal. I'm efficient. I learned from the best. I love you so much it's actually ridiculous. I love you too. Now kiss me before Mrs. Cho appears out of nowhere to give us more unsolicited advice." He did, and it was perfect, the kiss, the moment, the certainty that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. 1 year after the night at Celestine's, Imani returned to the restaurant for the first time. It had reopened under new ownership, a cooperative of the former employees who'd lost their jobs in the explosion investigation. Jiwon had helped them secure funding and navigate the business licensing. The menu was different now, more accessible, less pretentious. The atmosphere was warmer. They'd invited Imani to the grand reopening as their guest of honor. "You saved our lives that night," the floor manager said, the same woman who'd barely looked up when Imani had clocked out claiming a migraine. "If you hadn't pulled that fire alarm, if you hadn't warned everyone, we would all be dead. We owe you everything." "You don't owe me anything," Imani said. "You rebuilt. You created something better from the ashes. That's the real victory." She sat at booth 7, the same booth where Jiwon had left his $1 tip a lifetime ago. The table looked the same, but everything else had changed. Jiwon slid into the seat across from her, and the servers moved to take their order. But he held up a hand. "Actually," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket, "we're not staying for dinner. I just needed to come back to where it all started." "Jiwon, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago." He slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." Inside was a single dollar bill. Written in microscopic handwriting along the border were the words, "Marry me. If you say yes, I promise to tip appropriately for the rest of our lives." Imani's hands shook. "You're proposing with a $1 tip?" "I'm coming full circle. The first dollar tip was a warning that saved your life. This one is a question that could complete mine." Jiwon stood and moved to her side of the booth, getting down on one knee. He pulled out a ring box, real this time, not earrings or promises of future proposals. "Imani Lawson, you are the bravest, most brilliant person I've ever met. You've transformed my life, my business, and my understanding of what it means to be good. You make me want to be better. You make me believe that people can change, that empires can be built on ethics, that love can grow even in the darkest circumstances." His voice roughened. "I know we started in chaos. I know our foundation is complicated. But I also know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life building something beautiful with you. Will you marry me?" The restaurant had gone silent. Every employee, every guest, was watching. Imani thought about the past year, about the center that now served over 1,000 clients, about the schools teaching financial literacy to students who'd never learned that debt could be weaponized, about the partnership she and Jiwon had built, transforming Korean organized crime resources into community investment. She thought about her brother, who'd died protecting secrets that had become tools for transformation. She thought about the girl she'd been invisible, grieving, serving overpriced fusion cuisine while drowning in questions. And she thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, purposeful, partnered with someone who saw her completely and loved her anyway. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you. But I'm keeping my name. I wouldn't expect anything else. And I want the wedding to be at the community center, where Elijah's legacy lives." "Perfect. And you're going to tip our servers at least 30% tonight, because that dollar bill proposal was romantic but also deeply inappropriate from a tipping perspective. Jiwon laughed and slid the ring onto her finger, a black diamond set in platinum, matching the earrings he'd given her months ago. I'll tip 50%. I'm feeling generous. That's my fiancé. Overpaying to make a point. I learned from the best. They kissed while the restaurant applauded. And when they finally broke apart, Imani looked at the $1 bill still sitting on the table, the insult that had become a warning that had become a proposal. I'm framing this, she said. Next to the first one? Next to the first one. A complete set. The beginning and the beginning of the next chapter. There's poetry in that. There's irony in that. But I'll take it. They left Celestine's hand in hand, the diamond on Imani's finger catching the light, the future spread before them like an unwritten page. Outside, the Chicago night was crisp and clear. The city glittered around them, full of people struggling and surviving and hoping for something better. And somewhere in that vast urban landscape, Imani knew there were others like her, people trapped by debt or fear or circumstances beyond their control, people who needed someone to see them, to warn them, to show them the third option between surrender and destruction. She and Jiwon would find them. They would help them. They would build an empire not on fear but on transformation, not on exploitation but on empowerment. It's what Elijah would have wanted. It's what they'd chosen to become. Together. The waitress and the dragon. The ghost and the guardian. The woman who'd learned to read the stories hidden in numbers. And the man who'd learned that true power came from serving rather than ruling. They'd started with a $1 tip and a warning scrawled in margins. They were ending with a promise to each other, to Elijah's memory, to every person who'd ever felt invisible and powerless and trapped. The promise that good people could win, that love could grow from unlikely soil, that transformation was always possible, even when the world insisted otherwise, and that sometimes the worst tip you ever received could become the best thing that ever happened to you. If you were brave enough to read the message hidden beneath the insult, if you were strong enough to fight back, if you were willing to burn down empires and build something better from the ashes. Imani Lawson was all of those things, and she was just getting started. The end. Thank you so much for watching, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. If this story of revenge, transformation, and unexpected love left you breathless, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Would you have trusted the $1 tip message? Or would you have thought Park Ji-won was absolutely insane? Drop emoji if you're team. Always read the hidden warnings, or a emoji if you would have ignored it and run. This story is part of our Korean Mafia romance series, and I have so many more dangerous love stories coming your way. We're talking about powerful men who protect fiercely, humble women who discover their hidden strength, and the kind of cross-cultural connections that will make your heart race. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss when I drop the next chapter of passion, danger, and redemption. We're building a family here of people who love complex characters, morally gray romance, and stories where love is earned through fire and transformation. Share this video with anyone who loves Korean dramas, mafia romance, strong female leads who don't need saving but accept partnership, or just really good revenge plots with happy endings. Comment below. What should I cover next? More Korean mafia? Should we explore other cultures? Do you want a sequel about Imani and Ji-won's wedding? Or should we move on to a completely new couple with their own dangerous love story? Your engagement, your likes, comments, shares, and subscriptions literally helps me keep creating these stories for you. Every click tells YouTube that you want more dark romance, more cultural representation, more strong women standing beside even stronger men. I read every single comment. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm creating these stories for you. So drop your thoughts below. Tell me where you're watching from, and let me know what kind of dangerous love you want to see next. Until the next story, stay fierce, stay fearless, and remember, sometimes the smallest gesture, a $1 tip, a hidden note, a warning written in margins, can change your entire life. Much love, your storyteller. Bonus scene, for those who stayed until the end. 6 months after the wedding, Imani stood in the nursery of their new home, a renovated brownstone in Hyde Park that balanced security with warmth, and stared at the positive pregnancy test in her hand. She and Ji-won had talked about children. Someday, eventually. After the business was more established and the world was less dangerous, and they'd had time to just be married without additional complications. Apparently, the universe had other plans. Imani? Ji-won's voice came from downstairs. Did you find the quarterly reports? Found something else, she called back. You should come up here. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, quick and concerned. He appeared in the nursery doorway, and his expression shifted from worry to confusion. Why are you in the nursery? We don't have... He stopped, saw the test in her hand. His eyes went very wide. Is that... Positive. As of about 3 minutes ago. Jiwon crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, laughing and kissing her hair and holding her like she was made of glass and gold. We're having a baby. We're having a baby, Imani confirmed. I know it's earlier than we planned. It's perfect. You're perfect. This is perfect. I'm terrified. Me too. But we'll figure it out. Together. Like everything else. Imani pressed her face against his chest and felt tears building. I wish Elijah could meet them. His niece or nephew. I wish he could see what his sacrifice made possible. He knows, Jiwon said softly. Wherever he is, he knows. And he's proud of you. Proud of who you've become. Proud of the family you're building. Family, Imani whispered. I'm going to be someone's mother. You're going to be an incredible mother. You've been protecting and teaching and empowering people for 2 years now. This is just the next evolution. What if I mess up? Then we fix it. Together. And we raise a child who knows they're loved, who understands that power comes with responsibility, who learns to see the stories hidden in numbers and the humanity hidden in systems. Jiwon pulled back to look at her. We raise someone who would make your brother proud. Elijah Jiwon Park Lawson, Imani said, testing the name. If it's a boy, and if it's a girl, Jiwoo Eliana Park Lawson. Jiwoo means ambition and protection in Korean. Eliana means God has answered in Hebrew from Elijah's name. It's perfect. Jiwon kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're perfect. Our child is going to be so loved. And standing in the nursery of their home, built on the foundation of revenge transformed into legacy, Imani believed him. The story that had started with a $1 tip and a warning scrawled in margins was continuing, and it was beautiful. Now it's really the end. Thank you for staying. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.